Good. So
naona wengine wanaoa, nilikuwa napata wivu, nikatamani nami niwe na mkeo, nilikuwa ningali mudogo sana, lakini nikasema hakuna magumu. Niliwaza kama baba atakuwa nami, hata nisaidia kwa magumu yote, lakini kumekuwa ni kujitesa, lakini kumekuwa ni kujitesa. Sikujua kama unapata mambo ya hivi, sikujua kama unapata mambo ya hivi. Sasa najiuliza sababu gani kuambia, sasa najiuliza sababu gani kuambia, sikujua kama unapata mambo ya hivi, sikujua kama unapata mambo ya hivi.
So, welcome once again. This is One Talk Radio podcast, and we are also live on Dreamers Club Bahrain as usual. And as we had promised, that this is going to be a series of podcasting and discussion that we are going to have with my personal coach. I'll call her. I can see her already on the other side, smiling and waiting to get the ball rolling. And before we get to that, I would just like to remind you that this is going to be a series that will be happening every Saturday from 6 o'clock. We are going to talk about the brain of a man. We are going to dig deep into brain of a man and how to analyze it and what it contains, how to become a man from a baby to a young guy into somebody that can make decisions. So without wasting time, let me introduce our guest today, who's coming all the way from Ireland, Chadamoyo, Melody. Welcome to One Talk Radio podcast.
Thank you so much, John. It's such a pleasure to be here, especially because I am very interested in studying men, and I've been reading a lot about men for a long time. I'm not an authority because I'm not a man, but I've come across so many interesting books and information about the male brain and how men function, and maybe how they can start seeing themselves in that role, that I think would be helpful.
That's great, Melody. So before we even continue, Melody, somebody would be asking me, and who is this Melody and what does she do and why is she talking about men?
Yeah, that's a very, very big question. But in short, I started on a journey when I got married, and I suddenly discovered that my husband and I were not from the same planet. He was in another planet and I was in another. But because I loved him so much and I wanted to create a relationship that was full of growth, full of connection and happiness, I decided to try and see the world from his point of view. So I started looking at how do men think. And at that time, there were books like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus that I read. And most of it was such weird way of talking that I think I got it, but I didn't really quite get it. But at least it got me to a point where I realized that when my husband was doing things his way, he wasn't doing it intentionally to frustrate me. He wasn't doing it to make me sad or unhappy. He was doing it with the intention, one, of being himself, but two, of being the best for me. And that was an eye opener, because we stopped fighting about things that were not important, and we stopped fighting because I realized we were not at war actually, but we just did not see things the same way.
Wow, that's a very big one, Melody. Understanding and coming from a point where you don't believe in somebody that you are going to stay with for the rest of your life is a big thing. And you know, this is what make a person who they are, and that is what made you the person you are, and that's why you started or created that impact or the intention of learning what a man can be. So today or tonight or this evening, from wherever somebody is watching, we want to understand who exactly and what exactly does make up a man. So my first question to you, Melody, from where you're seated in Dublin, Ireland, I would like to ask you that apart from being born male, what makes a person a man?
Um, wow. Besides the fact that, people celebrate and say it's a boy before it becomes a boy, hormones and genes and all sorts of other things combine in a mother's womb. And most of the knowledge I am giving out today, especially, come from this book called The Male Brain, that was written by a medical doctor called Luann Bresentine. And I love it because she is a researcher and a scientist, but she speaks human. Like anyone can read that book and understand it. That's what I mean. And so she explains it scientifically, like what happens when, you know, a person is conceived and they become male. Apparently, it's suddenly the moment you're conceived and you are moving, because, male have got that Y chromosome, and it starts to multiply in that way. But the major thing is the hormonal part of it, because it is the hormones that determine what the brain is interested in. And their purpose is to help guide social, sexual, mating, parenting, protective, and aggression behaviors. And I'm literally reading from her book right now. And they can affect being rough and tumble, which boys love to do, which I never used to understand, and competing in sports or attending sporting events, solving problems, interpreting facial expressions and others' emotions, male to male bonding, uh, dating and mating, ogling attractive females, forming sexual and pair bond relationships, protecting family and turf, fantasizing, masturbating, and pursuit of sex. And I don't have a problem talking about all these subjects. So I'm sorry if people feel offended, but that's just the way things are.
Definitely.
And yeah, and in terms of, you know the hormonal, and then there's the physical part, and then there is the societal part. Society influences our culture, the way we behave, the way what we believe we are, and all sorts of things. So for a child who was born in Europe with,
Mhm.
with parents and stuff, they have certain beliefs about life, about who they are and where they stand in the world. For a boy who's born maybe in Africa and stuff, they also have certain beliefs about who they are and what's happening in their world. And that's just societal and cultural influence. And that happens all over the world in many different cultures. So what you believe a man does or who is determines on how you were brought up. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you might open up by mixing with other communities, and then you start seeing that actually what you believed is not correct. During this conversation, I would like to ask our listeners to put aside all that they've ever known about men for now. Just put it somewhere there and open your mind up to finding something new about this subject. Maybe for the first time ever, maybe not, maybe you'll be surprised, or maybe you won't, but at least put aside all your preconceived beliefs, ideas, and whatever. And also, I know I am female. I know men don't like to be told stuff by women. Put that aside as well for now. It will help you a lot. And yeah, we are starting on a clean slate. And as I am talking, I am also learning about men, about my brothers, my father, my anyone who comes into my life who is male, including my sons, my sister's children, and stuff like that. The reason why I'm saying that is in order for us to grow and develop and evolve as people, we need to stop believing that we have all the knowledge that we have now and that's it. We should be open to learning more and finding out more because there's always more. There is a lot we don't know in the world. And the only way to learn is to assume that what you know is not enough and keep learning. That's how I have gotten to this position where I get to talk to people like you, John, and many other people, because I'm always thinking there's always something to learn. And there is.
That's very true. That's very
Yeah.
true.
So getting back to hormones and biology and stuff, there are several hormones that a man is born with or has. And the most important one that everybody knows about, of course, is testosterone. But do you know what it does? It is the king of the male hormone and is the dominant, aggressive, and all-powerful hormone. That's what it makes men. It makes them very dominant, very aggressive, and all-powerful. They feel invincible, which as a woman used to puzzle me. Now it doesn't because I understand it. But before, one, it used to scare me, and two, it used to puzzle me because I could not understand why anyone would want to do that. And then it also gives the compulsion to outrank other males. If you, and I don't know, John, you can say yes or no. When men get together, usually before they do anything, they size each other up. They want to see who is the top dog. And the top dog will be determined sometimes by height, sometimes by stature, sometimes by marital accomplishes. So the man might be short, but if he drives a Mercedes Benz, people tend to look up to him. It has gotten usually people don't allow people who don't have the capacity for human compassion, the capacity for progress to take leadership roles, mainly because they have bigger statures, they look more beautiful, or they have more money. I don't want to give examples, but we know who we're talking about. And because of this, men get together and they size each other up, and then they say, okay, this is the person we're going to listen to, and they all listen to that person. And another hormone is vasopressin, and this is a hormone for gallantry and monogamy. I've heard many men saying, "Oh, men are not supposed to be, monogamous." According to hormones and according to your biology, you can actually be monogamous if you choose to. And it also gives you that need to aggressively protect and defend your turf, your mate, and your children. The other hormone is the MIS or Mullerian, I probably am not pronouncing it right, inhibiting substance. And this gives you the tough, the strong, and fearless. Ruthlessness strips away all that is feminine from the male. So that's when you find men frown upon anything that is female. They don't like that. They think it's it's just associating with it will diminish their masculinity. So they shy away from it and they push it away. But it's a hormonal reaction before it is a conscious reaction. So hormonal reaction is like it's instinct. I'm going to explain it like this. When I was still growing in my early 20s and late teens to early 20s, I used to suffer from PMS. And I would, for a week and a half, before my menstrual cycle, I would get really aggressive. Like I could not stand to see a man near me. And literally I would want to kill them. And if he dared to say something that was against what I was saying, it was war. And I wasn't consciously doing this. It was just, I would find that's what I did. It was like every time. And then I learned that this is what I do, and I started controlling it. But before before I knew that was it was like an instinct. I just did it. And then I learned to control it. So the whole point of us talking about these things is not to say, you say, right, this is who I am and I'm going to stay here. No, we are talking about it so that you become aware of what's going on inside you that you
Mhm.
probably were not aware of before. And when you are aware, then as a human being who is growing and developing and evolving, you start making a choice in how and who you want to be in the world. That's why we are talking about it. And the next hormone is called oxytocin. This is just the one that makes you want to be cuddled. And usually women have mastered how to stroke a man and make sure oxytocin comes out. Because when you are stroked and a little bit and held, then you settle down and you calm down and you relax. I think we could even use it like in the Bible, there's this Samson whose power was in his hair. That's and the hair, once the hair was cut, he was powerless. This is the hormone that does that with men. So again, some people have figured this out and they know how to make sure it comes out because we are women. We've mastered the way of making sure we can control men a little bit, you know. And then there's the prolactin hormone. This is new for me. I didn't know that men get prolactin because I know prolactin has to do with breastfeeding. It's women express it when they're breastfeeding, and men have prolactin hormone as well. But for them, it causes them to be sympathetic towards women when they're pregnant, and it also sometimes can cause what is the Covard syndrome, which is when a man feels the physical pain of giving birth when his wife is giving birth. And sometimes he even feels the pain and suffering of or whatever discomfort, not suffering, discomfort of carrying a child throughout
Mhm.
pregnancy. It's because some of them have got higher hormones and some of them have got lower hormones. So it just depends on how much hormone you have at a time. And also it increases dad's ability to hear babies cry and stimulates connection between fathers and children. So the hormone is very important. And if you hear a person saying, oh, yeah, I don't connect to children, it's because they are ignoring their natural instincts. Because society has told them that that's who they are and they shouldn't, change who they are. And then there's cortisol. This is when this cortisol comes out when a person is threatened and it makes him angry and fired up and willing to fight for life and limb. And that's why you find some men really get really angry and they are willing, and it's because of the anger and they, stand up to fight. Most men, when they are made angry, they don't back down. They want to fight. Whereas with women, they usually run or they play dead because physically we are not as big as you, so we would rather back down instead of getting
Mm.
into a fight. It
Yeah,
just
that's
doesn't work very well. And then there is androstenedione. I don't know. This is the charming hormone. This is the seducer of women. When released, this is released through the skin, so a man has no control over how it comes out. And this is the one that can get the girls. And it is more effective than any cologne and any aftershave. So just so you know. And then there's dopamine. And this is all about feeling good and having fun and going for gusto. It's excited and highly motivated. He's pumped up to win, and when men win, they feel amazing. When a man is done great, like that's why you find when a man has done something amazing, he will tell and tell and tell that story over and over again. Is to get that hormone to rise, because every time he tells the story about how he scored a goal or how he killed an animal or whatever, he continues to feel good and to feel good, and that feeds his sense of self. So when you hear if you have a boyfriend and they keep telling you story over and over again, instead of getting frustrated by the retelling, just understand that he's trying to get that hormone to rise, and maybe you can help him win more in your life, so he continues to feel that emotion or that hormone rising up inside him. Instead of saying, "Oh, your story is stupid. I've heard it 20 times," or whatever. Help him to win. And usually winning with men is very easy. He does something and he say, "Oh my God, that's so great. Thank you so much." And he feels great, which is always wonderful. Uh,
Are you serious about that?
oh yeah. Yeah.
So before
Appreciation is,
and and,
yeah.
and 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 before you continue, I just want to remind someone here.
Mm,
There's this Sir Felix Zamara. He says, "I feel for that brother there sitting there listening to all that."
okay.
And I would like you to remind Sir Felix Zamara that whatever we are talking about here, as the conversation started, you stated so well that first of all, we need to forget about us, forget about being a man, forget about what you know about being a man. Because Sir Felix is talking about how can a man sit there and listen to all that you're talking about right now?
Okay. Uh, well, you can listen because you are open to learning, and I'm sure, I don't know. Have you ever had you ever had this before
Mhm,
today?
mhm.
I'm asking you, John, in your case personally. Had you ever
No,
had that before?
some of them I've never had.
Yeah.
In fact,
So,
even if I've heard of them, I've never known how they react in my body because these are just things you can read from the book, maybe from school, and you don't know what kind of life or reaction does they participate in. So he says that he's just listening, not participating. Oh my goodness, I feel like Zamara. We are in a coaching session. We are, and I think your volume is high, Chadamoyo. You need to reduce it from your side
I
because
need
I'm
to.
listening to myself
Oh,
again.
okay. Okay.
Are you listening to anything besides?
Wait. Let's see. Uh,
Yes, because I can listen to myself back. So you can just, and we can continue as well. We are still listening to and understanding what, apart from being born male, what makes a person a man. So you can go ahead, Melody.
okay. Yeah, I was still talking about dopamine. I want to go ahead and say dopamine is addictive, addictively rewarding, particularly in rough and tumble. That's why you find, when boys are playing, they love to do wrestling. They are always jumping on top of each other and stuff like that.
Mhm,
Apparently, there's a hormonal benefit to them
mhm,
doing that. And if for most women, when we see our sons doing that, we would tell them to stop, because to us that seems really dangerous. So as a mother of sons, you need, oh yeah, fathers get that boys need to do that, but mothers don't. And as a
mhm,
mother of sons, you need to let them do the wrestling, because it's for their benefit.
mhm,
And that's another thing I had to learn. And I've had to teach my sisters and my girlfriends that, it seems insane for us, but it's beneficial for them. So we need to help them or understand and let them be who they are, because it's very important. And also it's also like, so in rough and tumble of boyhood or in sexual play of manhood, where it increases ecstasy during orgasm. And that's what the hormone does. And that's why also you find some men or most men seek to have that sexual connection with a person because they get this hormone and it gets charged up. And that's just the way things are. Then we move on to estrogen. And even though it doesn't have the same power over a man as testosterone does, but it may be the true force behind the throne, running most of the male brain circuits. It has the ability to increase his desire to cuddle and relate by stimulating his oxytocin. Again, we go back to oxytocin, which is the hormone that makes men feel, the world is happy again. And so that's it about the hormones. And take it what you may. I didn't write this book. There's an MD who wrote this book, and I'm literally just telling you the way she explains not just the hormone, but how it affects day-to-day existence for men. And she has the same book about women that also explains day-to-day existence for women and how these hormones affect the way we view the world, the way we engage with the world and with each other. And understanding that is so important that there are some things that I just used to think, yeah, men they were, I don't know, stupid or they were dogs. And, I'm going back a little bit. I started doing this work because whenever I went to my girlfriends or to other women to ask about when I was trying to understand my father or to understand my husband, usually women would respond like, men are crazy, they are mad, or they are children, or they are dogs. And and I honestly don't believe that. I always knew there was something else going on besides this. And I still remember my dad, because our parents used to make us look after day-to-day money as a way of getting us to understand money. And so when my dad wanted money for a drink, he would have to come to me. And I learned when I was very young that my dad could be so charming. He would say so that I would find it so difficult to say no to him. And then I would, give in and give him money. And then I would say, why did I do that? Like, that's just crazy. On one hand, I understood the benefit of saving as much as possible. But whenever he came, looking the way, whatever way he looked, he had a certain look and a certain way of behavior and certain words he used with me. And I would be like, okay, I'll give you all my money. And now I know this because he was, his ability to put on the charm was amazing. But men do that. And women, maybe sleep with a boy they didn't expect to sleep with. And then they think, how did I even allow myself to do that? What's going on? It's because you don't understand what's behind the behavior. And once you do, then you're more able to deal with it, I think.
You don't think that's how it is? I believe that's how it happens. So let me go back into asking you something, Melody. And before that, I would ask Nelta, because Nelta sent a question and she's asking why love. I guess that's what she's asking, and I don't relate how that question is coming and how you will answer it. So Nelta, if you're still listening, there's a way you can put that question to be in a better way for Melody to answer us. And Esther Kamunya says that, wow, I've learned something new today. So it's great at times to understand that people are learning outside there. I have also somebody watching live from Kenya, that is Kennedy Macorios, and as well as Esther Kamunya and Sir Felix de Zamara. So let us get straight into our second question, Nelta. As we sorry, not Nelta. I always call you your sister's name, Melody.
It's okay. I'm not offended.
I'm waiting for Nelta to send us that question again. But
okay.
Going by the biblical story of creation,
Mm-hmm.
and how God put or said to Adam
Mm.
in accordance to getting to survive. And for now in this century, if we relate the same thing, do you
Mm.
think a man has to struggle to survive?
I don't. Why? Why do I not think we should struggle? I think we struggle because we forget who we are. And I'm going to say things that might be a little bit scary, especially for Christians. But that's the truth according to what I know about God. So forgive me. Uh, you see, I believe God lives in me, through me, around me, everywhere. We know this. We always say God is everywhere. But if you look at the story of Adam and Eve, Adam believed God was everywhere. But then he also believed God couldn't see him or didn't see him when he was eating the fruit. And then he started thinking, oh, I'm naked. Like God had not seen him when he was naked, because it's like God was somewhere else and then came and found him and then he was covering himself. God was never somewhere else. God was always in him, around him, through him, because God is everything. I hope this makes sense. So, because Adam believed that God was elsewhere, he thought he could sneak around and do something and then cover up. And so that's how we have taken life now. We we believe God lives elsewhere, and then we live a certain life, then we clean it up because we think God hasn't seen what we are doing. When in actual fact, there is never a moment when you are not with God or when God is not present. So if God is present all the time and you're asking God to use you as his instrument to speak whatever or to do whatever you need to do to serve your higher purpose, it means when you ask, God is always there to provide. It means when whatever you're doing, when even sometimes the words you're speaking, because I get surprised by some of the things I say because I know they are not my words. I just speak them because they're coming through my mouth, but they definitely didn't come from my intelligence because I'm not that smart. I mean, seriously. But I am willing to be used to say things. I hope also that makes sense. So struggling is like or just surviving is because we have believed that we are separate and we've been separated from God. And I want to say something also to do with when Africa was colonized, there was something, our sense of self and our sense of belief in our connection to God was taken away. And for most of us, we have not reclaimed that back. And so we keep looking for things to replace that connection. When actually what we should do is take a break, stop, and acknowledge that our sense of we have been wounded spiritually and we need to heal spiritually. And unfortunately, even those who wounded us, because I think the Bible says, what you do to someone, you're doing it to yourself. That's why you find even those people who live in the West still struggle, still have problems, because what they did to us, they did to themselves. Sometimes they don't realize this, but that's what's happening. That's why you find suffering is still happening, because the pain we cause to each other is the pain we cause to ourselves.
That's fantastic. It leaves me with a question asking myself, Melody. So what makes life so difficult for a man? Because when a child, just like we started here, when a child is born and he's identified with his male side of story, what we always see is security for the family. What we see is a person who is going to add another thing in the family. But then when life starts, like for example, when a child develops from being a child into youth age into an adult, where now we need to go outside and try to struggle and make ends meet, things don't look the same. Everybody
No.
will talk about you have to work hard. Everybody will talk about life is not easy. Everybody will talk about you have to struggle. So, what is the reality outside there?
Uh, okay. When you tell, whatever you tell a child, you are imprinting into them. So if you tell the child, that's why you find people who are born in rich families find it easy to make money, because to them it's just, that's just the way things are. When you are born in a family that tells you life is a struggle, you will struggle. You have to fulfill that promise, because that's the teaching you've had. And when you tell little boys, and usually my heart breaks for little boys, and I've heard this so many times, even fathers do that to their sons. You are now a man. It's your responsibility to look after these people. He is 8 years old. The mother is 36 years old. How is he able to protect a grown woman? Like, that's insane, but that's the responsibility we give to little boys. So they grow up with this sense of expectation. And the expectation is so high that most of them are never ever going to fulfill the expectation. So they punish themselves because they are failing to be the person everyone expects them to be. And another thing is, our society has grown to the point where boys want to explore and have fun and enjoy and stuff like that. But we take them and we put them in schools and we say sit down for 6 7 hours per day, and that's killing that sense of fun and adventure, and and it's not normal. So that's what you call it, that stifling of growth and stifling of self is the one a lot of people struggle with. They know something is not good or is not comfortable. They just don't know what it is or why it is the way it is. And those few who try to stand up and do something, they're vilified, not just by their parents, but by society at large. And and that is the problem we have. That we've become so it's also for security. It's a natural instinct. Nobody, the brain does not want change. So when things start changing, the brain tries to very hard to keep things as the way they were. And so,
Mm-hmm.
so it's all suppressed. So when but we also have that sense of we can try harder, we can be bigger, we can do more, we have that sense, it's in us. But then society is saying stay there, stay there, stay there. So it's that struggle is more painful than if you are given the free reign to choose and be and do whatever you want to do.
That's exactly correct, and a very well stated, Melody. I would like to take you back, or as we get to the end of our conversation, Melody, before we close it up, or before we allow, and anyone who's watching right now and you've got a question to ask Melody, you can type it over there in the comment section, or you can also join the conversation. The link is in the comment section. You can tap and join and ask us questions that you want to be answered. You're a man, you're a girl. I see a lot of ladies are enjoying the conversation today, and they are really enjoying it. They're telling, you can see they're getting some power on how to deal with us men. So I would like to ask you this, Melody.
Mm,
Becoming self aware and falling in love with self is a magic spice to life. And the most difficult part of it is that becoming aware of yourself.
mm,
So how can a man take control of his instincts to impress self and not others?
I love that question so much because the other day I was listening to someone called Jack Kavanagh, and he was talking about his father telling him when he was a boy, actually, he would ask him a question. So go and impress yourself today, my son, instead
Mhm.
of, go do things to impress me, which is usually what parents do. But he said, go and impress yourself, which means this boy is going to do everything he can to do things that are good and not things that are destructive. Because when you're self destroying, you are not impressing yourself. That's just, natural.
That's true.
So, yeah. So when we look at, sorry, I'm forgetting your question again because I was distracted by the impress yourself. Uh, can you remind me? Just say two words and then
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
get it.
yeah. How can a man take control of his instincts to impress
Okay.
self and not others?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I get it now. So taking control of your instincts is to do with love and evolution. And a man who lives like an animal, in other words, you are just responding or doing what your instincts tell you, is not an evolved and developed person. And, and in order for you to be in control, one, you need to understand who you are. But the most important thing is you need to get in touch with your values. What's important to you? Your values will determine how you live your life. Because if family is important, you will do everything you can. One, to look after that family. Two, to maintain that family. Three, to provide for that family. Because that's the male owner. That's what men do. And if you don't have any values, you haven't sat down to look at who you are and what's important to you, you will just go with the flow. Whatever happens, happens. Understanding that we always have choice.
Yes.
That's what makes the difference between an animal and a human being. Human beings have got choices and they make
That's
choices. So when you have values, you make choices according to your values.
mhm.
And when you are not making choices according to your values, you need to sit yourself down and say, hey man, what the hell are you doing?
Mhm.
Yeah. As a parent, my aim is to be the most loving and understanding parent ever. I don't always succeed. When I find myself fighting with my kids, like I am lashing out and I'm not responding the way I think I should be responding, the one
Mhm.
thing I do is I say, why am I losing control? Or what's going on here? Why am I triggered by this? What's up? What's going on inside me? It's nothing to do with the child, it's to do with you. So I do that even when I started doing the work with the relationship with my husband. I had to
Mhm.
ask myself, so what does it mean to love my husband? Does it mean I only love my husband when he's doing what I want? And when we disagree, I don't? Because that's just crazy. But but if you don't have a time as a person, whether you're a man or a woman, to sit down and reflect on the actions you've taken, the decisions you've made, the choices you've made in life every day, or maybe even on a weekly basis, then you're just floating and sleeping through life. And you're letting your instincts and your hormones take control as if, you are not human. You're just a mere animal. That's, yeah.
Wow. That's a beautiful one, and that's big melody. I appreciate you for the knowledge that you're putting in our heads today. You know, these things are knowledgeable. We know them, but we don't know how to practice, or sometimes we just try to avoid taking good care of such kind of things. And you know, the biggest threat to a man, and more so boys, is that instinct of loving self. A lot of us don't love who we are. We just, like, for example, I would feel I'm a man when only I can provide. But what if I can't provide? What if I'm in a position where I can't deliver something as a man? Am I still able to stand just to be happy with myself and work hard to get it? This is always where the problem comes. And you see, we are men here, but a lot of us have got things inside. And instead of working on those things, maybe to develop ourselves, at times we tend to get out of the picture. We hide, or we go take our lives, or maybe we avoid our friends because you cannot provide, because you cannot be a man enough. You can't go to a club and maybe
Yeah.
bottle up some beers for your friends. This is what men think being a man.
Yeah. So
So
drinking, drugs, sleeping around, what else? Those three things. I can't think of the fourth one. I know there's a fourth one. Those three: drinking, having sex with every female you see, and drugs. All those, if you are doing those, one, they're a sign you don't love yourself. And two, you have trauma or pain you haven't dealt with, so you numb yourself. And if you are going to unpack your emotions, you will know exactly when you started hating yourself, or when you started resenting yourself, or who you are. And it probably happened when you were a young boy and you have never told anyone this, but you go around, being the big man by how much you drink and how much you can cause distraction to yourself. So what you can do is find help. And courage is shown by how much you can ask for help, not by how much you can avoid life. I know a lot of men, when they feel they're not good enough or they're not providing enough for their children, they leave the children with the mother and they go somewhere else because they cannot bear to criticize themselves as much as they are criticizing themselves. And they even think the women are criticizing them. I think I remember there was a time when I was talking, my husband was studying at some point and I was working full time. So I earned more money than him. And that was a shift in our financial situation, which to me was okay. But for him, apparently it was a big deal. And I never even mentioned, I was us talking to him and saying to him, you know what, I will get back to Felix when he's saying men must provide. I will get back to that. But I remember saying to him, we were talking about some financial situation we needed to handle. And he took it like I was accusing him of not earning enough. And I wasn't. It didn't even occur to me. It was just a stressor at the time. And then I went back and I realized this is what was happening. And I had to go to him and say, you know what? I am saying we have this situation we need to handle. I'm not saying it's your fault or it's my fault. It's a situation we are in. We just need to try and manage it for now. I know you're a good provider. You've always been a good provider. But it doesn't mean that if we have stress for money, it's your fault, because I don't think that's okay. And I want to go to say Felix's comment that a man must provide.
Yes.
Before we became kind of industrialized, how men provided was they would go hunting and then they'll bring a big animal and the family would eat and survive and all that, right? It doesn't mean women were sitting down doing nothing. They were gathering and gathering and gathering and making sure people did not eat poisonous things and looking after children so that they don't get killed by snakes and other, little animals. Then we started going to work. And for a little while, it was men went to work and women stayed at home. And if we're looking at Africa, men went to towns and women stayed in villages. It was a systematic way for colonizers to control us, because once they destroyed the family, it meant we were done, right? We didn't know this. So it created a culture of splitting of seeing the world. When men are in towns and women are in the villages, even if you go there once a week, the other 6 days you're not together, it's not a relationship. It damages your relationship a lot. And providing in this age, in 2020, for men has changed dramatically. But men's instincts have stayed in the 1900s. So most men feel threatened when they find a woman who has a great job, who's earning a lot of money. They think just because she has more money, she is going to challenge them. The strangest part is usually that doesn't even okay. It's like I don't look at a man and think how much money does he have. We don't size people up. That's not what women do. It's what men do. So they believe because that's what they do, that's what women do. And it's not.
Wow.
It's not at all. So your ability to provide is not in competition with your spouse. And
Wow.
if you're in competition with your spouse, you are not yet in a partnership. You are still living as two single people who live together. And I'm sorry I'm starting a new subject just as we get to the end, but
No,
that's
there's no
just
big deal.
yeah.
There's no big deal about it. So before I read Melta Chidamoyo's comment, there's Sana Fred who's also uh, s- saying here that personally, I think a man is defined by the cultural paradigm where we find ourselves. What do you think about that, Melody?
I think paradigms are just beliefs we choose. Like a belief is something that you choose to keep or to not keep. And I'm fortunate. I've grown up in a family in Zimbabwe, in Africa, where I was taught how to be a full human, where I don't need to constantly believe in something. Like my dad used to say, if something that you're doing is not serving you, you need to get rid of it, whether it's your culture or not. If it's not making you happy, don't keep it. And that's how we always lived our lives. And
Mhm,
and 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 because I live like that, that's how I live. If
mhm.
something, even if it's cultural, if it's not serving me and it's causing me more stress and pain, why should I keep it? I've got a choice, and I believe more in choice than in anything else. I believe in choosing the way I want to feel, the way I want to be, the way I want to do things in my life.
That's true. That's true, Melody, and I support that as well. You know, there's some cultural beliefs that confines us and as well as make us not to get the instinct that we need to have to impress ourselves. So we get ourselves impressing the culture or we get ourselves impressing the society, but inward we are suffering.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, Sana Fred, for sending that comment. And I have a comment from from Nelta. Sorry, Nelta says, "When you get a moment when you impress yourself, it is a glorious moment that lasts a long time. And when you have moments when you impress yourself more often, you live on such a high that and your life is a long stream of glory. There are no failures in your life anymore, just outcomes that didn't impress you." What a wonderful comment over there from
Yeah.
Nelta. And that doesn't even need to be discussed, right?
No.
And yeah, I have Sir Felix Zamara, I think he's coming all the way from Zimbabwe, says women do sizes, Melody. You might not be doing that, but most women does. I don't know.
uh, well, usually it's like this. Men make rules about life, right? And
Yeah.
okay, I'll give you an example. At some point in my life, people used to say, when you have done this and you're earning this amount of money and you can do this, then you are a man. They are saying this to women, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so you are now your own man. You don't need a man in your life. At some point, I truly believe that too. But I have evolved since then, and I've realized that that is insanity. There is no way I can ever be a man, not even a, 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 a pathetic one. I'll always be a woman. And I love being a woman. And I welcome my feminine elegance. It's amazing the things I can do because I'm a woman. And I don't wish to be a man at all. But society has taught women that we should expect men to provide for us. We should expect men, like, and my belief is, if a person is in charge of your food to the point that if they don't give you food, you are going to die, they are not your partner. So because of that, I don't believe in what, yes, maybe society is doing that, but it's because we have created it. And because we have created it, we can choose today. Say, Felix, if you have daughters and sons, you start teaching them that this is not the correct thing to do. The correct
Yeah.
thing is this. There are always better ways of doing things. If you bring up your daughters so that they expect another man to provide for them, yes, they will look at him as a way for survival. They will look for his money because that's what you taught them. But if you teach them that they have a responsibility to provide for themselves, a responsibility to earn a living, then they will do that. You will not find in the whole of Africa women who live in the village don't sit waiting for a man to come and provide for them. They don't do that. They've never done that. It's a town thing. It's a Western thing that we took on, and now we are making it ours.
That's very true, Melody, and I'll put a support on that and say women do go out there and get things that we can use and sustain, even paying our bills. And I give it to my mom because she used to do that. She took care of us. You know, she used to go out and get it for us. And that is why at times we need such kind of discussion so that we can start to wash away the mind, as you have said, that there are some Western cultures that we are bringing into our culture and killing our own culture. Yesterday or a day before yesterday, I was talking about Swahili as a language in Kenya, and which has gotten a lot of competition from the languages from outside. You find a school telling students or pupils not to talk or speak their own national language in schools, and if you speak that, you get punished. And borrowed languages like French or English are allowed, or German.
Yeah.
So you wonder, why are we picking things from outside and forcing it into us? And that is what we are teaching men today, that the culture has to change. Women do provide as well, and we should allow them to provide. I didn't read this comment from Esther Kamunya. It all begins with us. I think Esther Kamunya was talking about how women can get to treat men better. So you don't need to be waiting for men to treat you. You need to spice it. And that's what he's saying. It all begins with us. So my last question, Melody, before you go, before we leave you to go. Now we know how to become a man, because that is what we started with. We started with how does one become a man. We've talked about that, and we've put it in our head. And I think those who are watching and listening also on our podcast can tell now what exactly a man looks like. We've also tackled the biblical way of how to toil, how to go outside there and get it, and feed your family as a man. And you've told us different type of hormones that makes up a man. So my last question to you, and I would wish that you answer it in the shortest word or with the shortest word possible. What is the rightful role of a man in a society of the 21st century? The rightful role.
The rightful role is to embrace yourself, understand who you are and your values, take leadership in your life, lead the way you want you to be led, live by example. Don't tell people what to do. Live by example with your values and your sense of self, and love as much as you can, because that's very important. And you start by loving yourself. You go on to loving everybody around you, include your wife and your children. And you don't love them in words, you love them in actions.
Thank you very much for having your time with us, Melody. It was nice having you, and it has always been great to have you here. So those who are just joining right now, this is Melody Chadamoyo is speaking to us all the way from Ireland. He's a Zimbabwean by birth. And we are going to have these discussions every Saturday from 6 o'clock Standard Arabian time or East African time. So please like our page, follow the page so that you can get reminders to know more about the men's brain. And it's very important for the ladies. I've seen Esther Kamunya, I've learned a lot, and she's really appreciating why she took her time to listen to this. So I'll leave you to go, Melody, and also appreciate what you've been doing with us and support what you're doing, and we'll still continue supporting it. So, unless you have a parting shot, you have something for your fans, I'll let you to leave, Melody.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate everybody and I appreciate you a lot as well.
Wow, that was great, Melody. Having you is what we've always appreciated. And tomorrow we are having another discussion with a Kenyan-born Almasi Dangili. We'll be talking about the culture of Africa. We'll be talking about Swahili as a national language in Kenya, and also talking about Ken Walibora. There's a professor of literature who was fighting to support the Kenyan tradition and more so the Kenyan language, the Swahili, but is died some weeks ago or some days ago. I think his last week. So we'll be talking about what he's been doing, why he was struggling to bring back the tradition, the African tradition, and why we should be supporting it. So Almasi Dangili is a friend to Ken Walibora, and he's also an author, and is I will call him a fighter as well, who's trying to make sure that Swahili as a language is practiced, and no child or student will be told at any point in time that this is not a Swahili speaking zone. It's really a bad thing, and we need to start speaking about it. We must and always safeguard our cultures to be who
Yes.
we are. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Melody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. See you next week.
See
Bye.
you. Bye for now. Bye.
Watoto hawasomi tena, wamefukuzwa masomoni.
So, thank you so much for taking your time to listen to us. This is One Talk Radio podcast. We were live on Dreamers Club Bahrain Facebook page. So, such kind of talks comes. I think there was a comment. Wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, Sir Felix Zamara. It was wonderful having you as well. I really enjoyed your comments. I enjoyed everything that was there. Esther Kamunya, Nelta Chadamoyo, Sana Fred. There was also Kennedy Macorius who left us. There was also there was somebody by the name Evan Sodur. Yeah, all those who are with us and watching us live. Thank you so much. Nelta says, great job, you too. Well, Nelta, and you know how your sister is always good on the other end of the studio. So thanks so much for having your time and staying with us. This is One Talk Radio podcast. I leave you from Facebook Live. I'll get back to studio to continue doing what I'm doing right here. Thank you, guys, and have a blessed evening, have a blessed morning, have a blessed afternoon from wherever you're watching. Thanks, guys. Peace upon you, and don't forget, tomorrow we are having the best discussion, especially those who are coming from East Africa. And if you understand Swahili so well, tomorrow is your day. And don't keep away if you don't understand Swahili, because we'll be trying to mix the languages so that you can understand what we'll be discussing tomorrow. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Cheers.